So you've probably read my policy book. I've identified $15 billion of spending cuts that, frankly, I think will make California stronger, not weaker. And they really fall into four buckets, and then I'll tell you how we get them done. Bucket number one is the number of people who work for the state. And this is an analysis that you will resonate with. Today we have about $85 billion of revenue in the general fund, down from over $100 billion because of the recession. So the first question I asked 18 months ago was, when was the last time we had $85 billion in revenue? And it turns out it was 2004, 2005. The next question I asked as a business person, and how many people did we have working for the state just 5 years ago? 40,000 fewer. And the state did not fall into the ocean 5 years ago. So my view is there is a way to streamline the size of government in terms of the number of people who work here. We can do part of it through attrition. Part of it's going to take technology to do more with less. We're going to have to class departments. I mean, there needs to be an overhaul on how we staff state government. Number two is pension reform. You know, we have $100 billion unfunded pension and health care liability to the public service employee unions. We are going to have to take this up. The current cost is $3.3 billion a year to try to fund this unfunded pension liability.
How much is the number? I'm sorry.
$3.3 billion last year, up 2,000% since the year 2000.
Right.
So we have to take this up. 15 other states have. We have not. And this is probably the biggest difference between me and Jerry Brown, is Jerry Brown cannot take on these public service employee unions because he's beholden to them. They're funding his campaign. They're funding the IE against me. The third area is welfare reform. You know, we have 12% of the population of the United States, and we have 32% of the welfare cases. We have 5 times the welfare cases that New York does, but only twice the population. And again, this is a cost issue. I also think it's a strengthening of the community issue. And then lastly is, how do we use technology to run the government more efficiently? And there, I think, the most recent very good example of this is Caltax. I don't know if you read their report. They've identified $19 billion worth of waste and fraud and abuse over the last 10 years in California. And it is simply remarkable. $1.5 billion a year of workman's compensation fraud, $5 billion of Medicare and Medi-Cal fraud, 100, what was the right number on workman's insurance, unemployment insurance fraud, $1 billion of unemployment insurance fraud. So the reason that we cannot find fraud very well at the state level is because we have not used technology to monitor large-scale systems. So I ran PayPal. How you find fraud in big systems is you mechanize it, you automate it, and then you look for patterns in the data that lead you to believe that there's something unusual going on. And we've not done that. I mean, as you know, I come from Silicon Valley, 1,000 miles, 130 miles from Sacramento, 1,000,000 miles away in terms of how technology is used.
Oh, yeah.
So the number of people, pension, welfare, and simply being smart managers, running this effectively and smartly, which it is not. So how do you do that? First is you've got to get the right appointments. So the governor of California gets 3,000 appointments, 300 of which are very important because they're your agency heads, your department heads, your cabinet secretaries, and all the gubernatorial appointments to the 395 boards and commissions that we have in California.
Wouldn't you just eliminate those most or some?
You'd like to certainly eliminate many.
Yeah.
The California Performance Review identified 100 that should
Exactly.
be eliminated.
A lot of this work has already been done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the tragedy of the California Performance Review is they identified $32 billion worth of savings over 5 years, and they never went after virtually any of it.
Oh.
If we'd gotten half, we'd be in a much better position today. So you can do a lot of this work on running the government more efficiently and effectively without approval from the legislature within the context of your administration. So automation, finding fraud, reorganizing, doing more with less. Headcount, the number of people who work for the state, mostly can be done within your aegis, not all. And then, so I will also say that of those top 300, my view is 100 have to come from the private sector. The government's not going to reinvent itself from within. We've got to get a nice, healthy dose of people who have a more current view of how to run things efficiently and effectively.
Aren't a lot of the appointments now from the private sector?
No. Most of these appointments, and this is something where I think Governor Schwarzenegger missed an opportunity. because I did not run eBay by myself. I will not govern California by myself. If you have run a large organization, you know you are only as good as the people who work with you. You can't possibly hope to change an organization with 357,000 people and $130 billion in revenue without a team all the way down the line. And so I will interview every one of these people. They will be the right people in the right job, and they will not, those appointments will not be used for political payback, which is typically what happens, right? You know, you did something nice for me in the campaign, or when I was an assembly member, or whatever, and here's the, you know, the commission, the $100,000 a year salary to the XYZ commission. Not doing that. And good news is I'm not beholden to people to do that. So, we can come back to the boards and commissions because they create as much havoc as the legislature. So the people you hire are essential. Second, the governor has to work with the legislature, but the legislature has to work with the governor because of the very powerful veto pen we have in California, both overall as well as line item. And what's happened here, and you talk to many people in Sacramento, they'll tell you this, the legislature has become a bill factory. You know, they served up 2,000 pieces of legislation last year. The governor signed into law nearly 700 pieces of legislation. I was with Jeb Bush the other night from Florida, and I told him the statistic, and he was like, he was howling. I was like, how could that possibly be? What are they doing there? I know.
Yeah.
He was like, I think, you know, when I was governor in Florida, I think we signed into law 23 pieces of legislation. He said, what are they doing up there? And so it's all about the new stuff. And what we've got to do is stop the new things until we fix what's in front of us. Let's turn that legislature into, okay, how are we going to fix education? How are we going to get government spending under control? How are we going to improve the business climate here? And so I think, actually, we can do this. I mean, Republicans and Democrats will disagree on how to solve education, but at least we'll be working on the same problem. And I am a big believer that, you know, if you don't care who gets the credit, you can go a long way. So if there are Democrats who, you know, want to help solve the education crisis because they want better schools in their districts, have at it. Let's make people famous for keeping jobs in California. And so I think there's a way forward there. I will also say the next governor of California has to move to Sacramento. You got to buy a house. You got to be part of that community. You've got to have relationships. I'm a big believer in relationships. And people in Sacramento, they may not agree with me, but they will know where I stand. And they will trust me. They will know that I, you know, mean what I say and I say what I mean. And I think that's going to be an important thing as well. And then lastly, and Martin's heard me say this, this is one tough job right now. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is hard, this is a 12. Because a lot has gone wrong for a long period of time. You cannot pin every problem in California at Governor Schwarzenegger's feet. This has been a long time coming. And so I think, you know, as you try to take on the education establishment, cut government spending, change the business climate here, I mean, you know, you could end up with 75% of the people unhappy with you while you are in the middle of trying to reshape and reform California.
And that's just the first week.
Yeah. So I often say if you have a huge need to be liked and to be popular, very bad job person fit. Because I think it's really brutal.